Give another 2 minutes. What's the right time? 8:03. I'll give it 2 more minutes to start. Before we start, I just want to ask the Hebrew if
This is the rabbi.
sorry. Hello. Okay. Yeah, I just want to ask Hebrew if anybody, if everyone's experiencing what I heard from some others yesterday, California and St. Louis, that a lot of anti-Semitism in the high schools, incidents and things going on. Is that happening in your different areas? So the kids are a pachad and everything. The kids are. Anybody out there? Anybody going through that with their kids in high schools?
I haven't heard of anything, to be honest with you. Again, Rabbi, I'm not employed by NCSY, but I work for the public school system. And over here in Nevada, there's not much noise. There's, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah,
Thank God.
That's good.
No, we here in Philly, we've had big JSU meetings of over 100 kids, but we haven't had any real like protesters within the meeting. So Baruch Hashem, everything right now is fine, and hopefully it stays that way.
So maybe California is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I know in Canada there's been a few things. Thankfully, I haven't heard or experienced anything as a direct retaliation like to our JSU. It seems that it's mostly more isolated incidents, more like one-on-one kind of thing. But there is a presence here.
There's a presence of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
In Toronto.
For sure in Toronto, there was an incident, like a serious incident earlier this week in Toronto. And I heard even here in Ottawa, there was an incident of like some kids were throwing pennies at a girl.
Yeah, proceeding up. Okay, so what we need to do is learn Torah. Just stay strong in what you need to do in our bitachon and our emunah, and that can ward off a lot. Okay, we are starting. Mr. Hashem, excited to start Perakira. I assume everyone here has not yet learned Perakira before, learned Shia וחזרה. So it's a great chance to steig. It's a great chance to really grow together in this. It's an amazing parak, amazing limud, and very again Lamaisa, and it's also we do it in this as part of the CSI problem smicha because it's very negia to it's obviously negia to all of us every Shabbos, but particularly to Shabbatones and what things can heat it up and how can they be heated up and so on and so forth. It's very, very negia Lamaisa to a lot of shabbos that come up in the field. So
is Amir La'akim also a sugya we're doing, or we're going to learn it as a prat here?
So we just did Amir La'akim not long ago. I guess we'll see when we get past this how many in this present Chabura have actually already learned it, or not. Then we can see about that. But it's a possibility.
If it's not going to be done on its own, could it be done as a prat here by any chance? Just because like that's the most negia thing for me anyways, personally.
I guess we finish this, that we finished Shia Chazar and some Bishul. I guess we'll take a poll and see how everybody's holding with that.
Okay, thanks.
Definitely a possibility. Once we're already holding in Shabbos, so Amir Lakum was it just last time we did it, it took like a solid year to really cover it properly, and I probably do it shorter this time because I think it was just too long for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
To really do it properly is vast. It's pretty vast. It's humongous. So yeah, it's all. But okay, we'll see. Soon the time comes for that. All right. So starting here now, we're starting with Pirakira, even though we have a sugya bishul, which is deraisa, bishul and Shabbos deraisa, which will be various small sugyas throughout Shabbos and Siman Shini Uches in Hilchos Shabbos. But we're starting here with this parak, even though it's derabanan. It's not directly bishul per se. I mean, there are enough communities that come out with when we have the gzera, we don't have the gzera, based on whether it's already muvushal or not muvushal, to what extent things are muvushal, if there's a gzeras shia on it. But I thought it was more important to start with this because just as a chabura, as a tzibur, so this is a solid sugya to start with. As a mitzad limud, it's a real sugya. Bishul is more difficult because it's just a scattered pieces of Gemara here and there, different places, less of a real sugya to sink our teeth into to get into Shabbos and get into these. So that's where we're starting with Pirakira, which is pretty common. Those learn Bishul to start with Kira, even though that's the Derbanan side of it. And actually, the Gzera of, as you see, we'll see through the Parak, the Gzera over here is not a Gzera of Bishul per se. Like, even though it's in the Sugya of Bishul, but it's not on the Derbanan side, but it's not really a Gzera of Bishul, it's really a Gzera of Havara, of igniting a fire, of doing Shem Yechateh B'Gehalim. This is the overall chash over here, the big chash. So it's really a sugya of Havara more than it's a sugya of Bishul, although it's very intertwined with Bishul and the Gedarim of when we have this Gzera, don't have the Gzera. So we learn it together always with Bishul. Okay. First of all, in the Mishnah, we try to learn properly Rashi, and we'll see how Rashi really, every word of Rashi is so meduyak. Rashi is so careful the way he writes every single word in this Mishnah, as he always is, but we can see it very clearly when we take a look over here. So Kirish is a gua b'kasha b'glava. You heat up this kira. The kira is this type of earthenware oven they used to have that's attached to the ground, and it's enough room to have two pots sitting on top of it. And you heat it up with fire, so you use straw or like the twigs that you gather from the field, which that's a material that does not leave gachalim, doesn't leave coals. So no samalea tavshil, but then there's no problem putting tavshil there because there's nothing to stir, there's nothing to be machata. But gefes of eitzin, but if it's with wood or with the pits left over of the olives, so then lo yitain achi yigroif achi yitain efer, because there's what to stir, so you can't put it on the fire, which discusses whether yitain is talking about an erev Shabbos. It's for sure on Shabbos goofing up, but to what extent there's a problem of Shia and Chazar and erev Shabbos. But here we're talking lo yitain. Pasha's talking about erev Shabbos achi yigroif achi yitain efer. You can't even put it there to sit there to stay through Shabbos until it's garuf hakatum, until you sweep away the coals, which is machlokes Hashanah, whether that means completely sweep away or it means sweep it to one side, as we'll see. Watch you eat in this afer, or you scatter ashes over it, not afar, but afer ashes, not dirt, and we put the ashes over it, and that's a covering of the fire, which we'll see in the Gemara. That's even a very thin covering. Doesn't have to be a thick covering, even the thinnest covering of all, still that works for this zera. So they say that we're talking about putting hot water there, but not cooked food, because food always gets better. It's cooked more. So the Shamayos goes there a gzer shia by tavshil, as long as it's not go for katum. Beisil amrim chamin v'tavshil. That what you're allowed to leave is going to be chamin tavshil, which we're just reading words right now, but the Gemara obviously is going to discuss what these words mean and what we're talking about. Talking about shia or chazara, or talking about gar for katum or not. The Shama Omrim Notlin of Alakzirin, Basil Omrim Afmakzirin. So you could take it off, you can't put it back on. Basil says you could also put it back on. Okay, so what are we talking here? So let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi says, Kira Asuya Kein Kedera. It's the type of a pot itself. It's like it's a whole heating vessel, like we call it an oven, like a kedera of a nostin kedera l'soicha. You put the pot inside of it. Now the Rashi is a little difficult. Why does Rashi say put the pot inside of it? Later on, the Gemara is going to say that the gzera applies, or the question applies, whether it's al gaba or l'soicha, whether it's inside of it or on top of it. And Rashi explains the mission over here, l'soicha, the shitasoi, that we're going to see through the Rashi here and through Rashi throughout the whole sugya, that this gzera over here of Shehiyah, Rashi learns is really one gzera together with the gzera of hatmana, of covering, which the Gemara says earlier, Daf Lamed Daled, which we'll see over there soon, and the Rashi over there, that the gzera hatmana, the ikar gzera hatmana is by davar hamosef hebel, that they ask her to cover it over with things that add heat to it, which the pashtus is the main thing that has heat to it is to cover over a pot completely with coals. So that's the ikar gzeras hatmana, is to cover it with coals. And then from there goes there anything that's mosif hevel, has a thing that adds heat to it, is a gzera hatmana. So Rashi learns this whole sugya here. It's not a new gzera coming up. It's not a new iser shehiyah. It's a continuation of the hatmana that we had in the previous parak, Daf Lamed Daled on the base, and the Balamor learns Rashi that Rashi saw that this sugya is sandwiched between two atmanas. Atmana before the Mishnah before of Atmana before this parak started, and then we have the next parak is Bemet Tomnin. There's a whole parak about Atmana, and since this sugya is sandwiched in between, so Rashi learned that this sugya is just a continuation of that of Atmana, and it's going to be telling us a lot of Tanoim and Heterim and Isurim when we say this Isur of Hatmana. But the sugya is a sugya Hatmana. And that's pashtus why Rashi says we're talking about the even though there are situations where it might or might not be okay to put it on top of it, on top of the stove, where it also benefits from the heat that's inside the kira, but Rashi chooses to explain the pashtus of the Mishnah. You put the kira l'socha, because l'socha is where they would actually they really wanted to keep it hot. You put it on top of the coals inside this. You would open up the door of it and put it inside of it and close that door, however that worked. And so it's talking about laying the pot on top of the actual coals, touching the coals. That's the Steven's Sasuga over here, because that puts it into the realm of Hatmana. If we're going to have an extension of that, putting it on top on the stove as well, then if there were gozer Hatmana, maybe there also gozer. We'll see how that works. The extension of the hatmana to on top of the pot, but the ikar gzera is hatmana, and therefore Rashi explains that the pasuk shot in the Mishnah is that you put the pot inside of it on the coals. It goes on to say kasha gvava, so it says what these things are. Gefes is psolas shel sumsun mishu shumnan. So we have the pits that are left over, and they get very hot, and they remain as coals. Achi yigroif hagacholin. The pashas Rashi learns that you have to sweep it all away. Rashi says the gacholin. That's mashma that Rashi is learning like the Rishonim. That when garuf means you have to sweep away all the coals, because if you didn't sweep them all away, as long as there's still coals there at all, even if the place you're going to put the pot down on is not going to have coals, you swept it to the side. Still, there's a gzeras hatmana because it's right next to it, and since it's shaykh to be matzamin in that coal, so that Chazal made one gzera, you can't put it next to it either. And Rashi says the reason is mishum b'mosif hevel, because these, as long as it's there, as long as the coals are still there, they're mosif hevel, which Rashi is borrowing the words from the sugi of hatmana previously in Lamed Daled, that Chazal goes there by hatmana to aser b'davar hamosif hevel. Anything which adds heat to it is nichlal on that, and that's why in the first Mishnah in the Metomanim it speaks about, goes to a whole long list of materials that some of them are considered that they add heat, some of them don't add heat, which things are in that cloud, which there goes to that atu. You might be matme beremetz. You might, if for matman and davar and dvarim shemosifim hevel, things that add heat, you might come to actually be matman in the remnants itself, in the actual coals. So Rashi here borrows the words from over there in order to make sure that we understand that the gzera of Shia is a gzera of Hatmana. It's Nichlal and Hatmana. The Taima Prishna of Perak Del El, the reason it says, we explained before, Shema Yachata Begacholim. So we take a look at Rashi over there. Look at that Gemara in Lamed and Beis. Actually, if you look at Lamed and Amud Aleph in the bottom, so it starts there in Amud Aleph, in the very last three lines. Amar Rava, Amru ain't Tomnim b'davar she'eino mosif hevel, mishach hashecha. Why can't you be Tomin? Once it's already Shabbos, you can't do Atmana even by davar she'eino mosif hevel. You just want to like wrap it in towels or whatever. So the towels are not mosif hevel. Then why not mishach hashecha? Gzera shema yarsiach. Might come to see that it's not hot enough. Might come to heat up the pot. I'm going to buy Yachi Benish Mashas Nami Nigzor. So what maybe also on Benish Mashas. I want to stand there as Roscoe saying by how you get to Benish Mashas. So we assume most pots are just taken off the fire, and that's why you've been matmin them. There's still Roseach, so you're not going to come to do that. But later on in Shabbos, it might have cooled down a little bit. You might forget and be heated up. Dama Rava, the Amru. Now it's where we really need. Ein Tomim b'davar hamosif hevel. Afilni be'od yom. Why can you not be toimen with something which adds heat, even if it wouldn't be b'od yom? Gzera shem yatmi beremetz. Shesh b'gachelas. You might, if you do that, then you might come to the next week to do hatmana also in ashes that have coals in it, that are still alive coals. Amalei abaya v'yatmin. What's the problem? So put it there. Who said? What's the problem with that? Gzera shem yachata b'gacholim. Gzera is for these words that first appear. It's a gzera, you might come to stir the coals. If there are coals there, you might come to stir them. So there's room to learn that this is a separate gzera, hatmana, and we get to our parak, and it's a whole new gzera. The Rashi already over there, make sure that we don't make that mistake. Rashi says, gzera shema yachata b'gacholim, mishach hashecha, shabal lavasha l'gdera, shalom bishla kol tzarka. You're coming to cook a pot that wasn't bishla kol tzarka. So the fact that Rashi adds in Shalom Bishul Kol Tzarka, Rashi's already adding it. We're already tasting a little bit of our parak in here because the chalukim of Kol Tzarka, Lo Kol Tzarka really appear in our parak. The Gazru Af Bishul Kol Tzarka Ashiyigov Ashiyigdon. There's a gzera. Even if it was Bishul Kol Tzarka, until you do, unless it's Garfa Katam. Achavaskina and Parak Kira in our parak. Rabbi Kitma Behuvara Mashin Aliyah Chamin Shukma Bimbo Kol Tzarkan V'Tavshul Shabishul Kol Tzarkan Tenem Rabbi Yochanan. So Rashi is already bringing us into another sugya we didn't get to yet in Lamed Beis. By Kitma Behuvara, if you did katam, you covered over by ashes, and then the wind blew or whatever, and it rekindled the fire despite the ashes. So we say that you're still allowed to be masha on it, because since you already put the ashes down, we'll see what the lumbus is, but you already makayim the gzeres, you're makayim the gzera of grifak tuma, and therefore you're allowed to, even though the wind blew it up again, you're allowed to be masha on it. So basically Rashi is completely mixing into this sugi of hatmana, or the ikar place where the Gemara explains the gzera of hatmana. Rashi's putting all the klolim of our parak into that sugya, showing us that Rashi from both sides of the aisle, back there in Atmana and over here in Shia, is putting the two together. That's why Rashi's madgish over here that your gurif the gechalin, then you have to. It's because the gechalin are most from hevel, and therefore there's gzeras Atmana on them. And Rashi then the shitaso adds in. The next Rashi, Yitan Efer, Agabe Gecholin Lachasosan Ulatzananam. So here Rashi adds in a word that it's to cover them and to cool them down a little bit. Because according to Rashi, Hagufa, so you have to cover them. That's in Tzadaka, that's we'll see if that's a heker, exactly how the that chelik, but when you machasa them, Rashi says l'tzaninam, by doing a ma'isa to tzanin them, so then you're taking away the fact that it's the davar hamosif hevel, and so you're here we're machadish in this parak ways to be mater hatmana even if davar hamosif hevel. That with the Gemara just says stam that it's also back in Lamadalid. The Rashi is saying over here is that true it's also, but if you do something to cool them down a little bit, so that then the Gzeres Hatmana no longer applies. The Pashas, the Pshat and Rashi will be is that since you did a Maisa to cool it down, we'll see in a minute. Tosa is going to ask this kasha that even if you put the afer can be very thin, like we said. The Rashi is also masking to that. It doesn't have to be a thick layer of afer. So how much is going to already cool it down? It's going to be much. Tosa's asked that even if you cool it down a little bit by putting a little bit of afer, it's the coals are way hotter. They're much hotter than a lot of the things in the beginning of Parak Metomnim, the first Mishnah there, the next Parak, that are also because of davar most of hevel. They're far less hot than coals that have a little bit of ashes on them. So let's say salt. Salt is considered davar most of hevel. So salt is not nearly as hot as coals covered by a thin layer of afer. But the Pshat in Rashi is not that the tzananam it makes it no longer davar most of hevel. Rashi never meant that. The Pashas will be in Rashi, and we'll see in the Ran something similar to this. But Rashi is learning that. So this will be the answer to Tosa's kasha that the tzananam once you're in tzanan it, not that it's then less than other. It's not the etzem of davar most of hevel b'tzad atzmo. Of course it is, but by you cooling it down even a little bit, it's your gilui das. You cover it in a way that you have a reminder that it's there, and the action of covering it was a maisa gilui das that you are not interested in stirring this pot. You're declaring your gilui das. You're making a declaration by covering it. I'm not going to stir this pot. That's what Chazal said. That's enough not to be gozer anymore. That the whole chash is shemli yachata b'galim. So I'm showing I'm not going to stir this thing because if I wanted to stir it, I wanted it to be hotter. That I wouldn't cool it down to begin with. So even though there's a tipa ba'alma of cooling down, that's enough to be megala das that I'm not interested in stirring these coals. Okay, and just to finish off the Rashis here. So Beshama Omrim Nostan Alei Achamin Achashar you could put hot food after you took away the coals. The Letzricha Livshule, the Likal Migzar Shami Yachata. So you're by taking away all the coals, you're showing that you don't need to cook it anymore because there's nothing. There's no longer muckin to be goes there. There are no coals. Avalot tavshel the nichale b'shulei. So in other words, Beis Shammai says that even though you took away the coals, if it's a thing be'etzim that needs cooking, they still answered it. Beis Shammai is very machmir over here. So the only chamen, only hot water that you don't need to cook once it's hot. You don't have to cook it anymore. There's no gain by it cooking by food. So there's a concept of mistamach faralo, mistamach yafalo. The word mistamach literally means you shrink. Some foods are better when they're shrunk and the kids keep on cooking. Let's say take a cholent. Cholent could be completely 100% muvusha kol tzorko on Erev Shabbos, and you could eat it and it'd be totally edible, but it tastes like a stew. Doesn't taste like a cholent. It takes the overnight on, continue to cook and stomach. So it's called mistamach v'yafalo. The more it cooks, the better it is. So that nichale b'shula, you want it to cook, you want it to keep on cooking. So that's the differentiation between water and other cooked foods. Avalot tavshel the nichale b'shula v'asilachtu. You may come to stir coals, which is a b'chiddush in Beis Shammai if you already did gar v'katom. Inami niskayim machshavto mixukim v'ashel. Another pshat in Beis Shammai, because if there are no coals, what's there to stir? So you could say that niskayim machshavto, that if by food what you wanted to happen did happen, it continued to shrink and get better and more tasty. So then there's a new gzera called mixukim v'ashel, which is not mentioned anywhere in the Gemara. Rashi's machadish this, not to know exactly where the makom for that is, but Rashi assumes that there's a second gzera besides Machata B'Cholin, that there's another gzera of mixik and mavashel that looks like you're cooking, and at least to others it looks like you're cooking, and people come to cook on Shabbos. So it sounds like first from this Rashi that maybe only Beis Shammai holds with this idea, but you see from the next Rashi that Rashi says lo machzirin b'Shabbos mixik mavashel. According to Beis Shammai, you can't be machzor on Shabbos at all. Again, for the same reason, mixik mavashel. And Beis Hillel says af machzirin ho v'garuf. Since it's garuf, the Beis Hillel holds there's not a problem of mixik and mavashel. So here Rashi is alluding to let us know that Beis Hillel also agrees that there is a concept of mixik and mavashel. It's just that Rashi over here saying a chiddush that according to Beis Hillel, the gabe chazara, so Shia it's not mixik and mavashel. You put it on before Shabbos. It's not, since you're not doing a ma'isa on Shabbos, there's no mixik and mavashel. But Rashi is introducing this concept of mixik and mavashel when it comes to chazara, since you are taking a pot, putting it on the fire on Shabbos, and there's a to'elis in that when it comes to food. So then Beis Shammai holds that chazara always is mixik and mavashel, even if it's garuf, it's mixik and mavashel. And Beis Hillel is cholek only because it's garuf. In other words, Rashi is saying when Rashi says the words hol of garuf, since it's garuf, that's why Beis Hillel is not worried about Beis Shammai's taina of mixik and mavashel. Otherwise, they would worry about that. Otherwise, Beis Hillel is masking that there's a concept of the mixik and mavashel, just that the Rashi over here is machadish in those two words, that there's actually a double to'elis in garuf hakatam. The stam din of garuf hakatam we're saying over here of covering with the coals is to take away gzeras hatmana, and that's shem yichata b'gecholim. Now Rashi is telling us that the gabe chazara, we see that there's a second to'elis in being garuf hakatam, that when it's garuf hakatam, it's not mixik and mavashel. That's the machlokes Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai holds that even though it's garuf hakatam, if you put a pot on the fire on Shabbos, no matter what is the matzah of the coals, it's still a mixik and mavashel. And Beis Hillel made once you did a ma'isa to the kohen to show you don't want to cook and everything, so obviously you're not out to cook. So that ma'isa takes away the mixik and mavashel. But otherwise, there would be a problem with mixik and mavashel gabe chazara. So all this is nichlal in the Rashi here in the Mishnah.
Any question on that?
Yeah.
I mean, so first of all, is it a gzera? Mixik and mavashel, is it a gzera in this same cohort of gzeras, or is it a gzera of like general, whatever it's called, like marasayin or something like that?
Well, it's a marasayin type of din that that's what it sounds like. That if you do it ma'isa, it's mixik and mavashel, then people will think that it's okay to cook on Shabbos.
It's not, but it's not like the general din of marasayin. It's like a specific marasayin here that was like nigzer specifically that this is marasayin.
Yeah, it's Rashi's telling us that like we started off saying that the main sugya here is really not a sugya of bishul. It's really a sugya of machata b'gecholim, which is havara, not really bishul. But now in the Rabbanan level, we tell us that there's a problem of mixik and mavashel. So mixik and mavashel is a bishul problem, because it's gonna cause others to mistakenly think you can cook on Shabbos.
So like it's reminding me of something we did in the last year, but the point is that it's like it's reminding me of the Hadar thing. Like we're designating here that this is like marasayin. Why doesn't the regular din of marasayin work? So you hear what I'm saying?
Mixik and mavashel would be a type of marasayin. It's
like they're designating as marasayin.
Yeah.
So then how does something you do before Shabbos cleaning the coals, how would it avoid it?
Pardon?
How would doing something before Shabbos cleaning the coals, how would that avoid marasayin? You don't know that the coals are not there. It's inside an oven.
No, that's wherever you're going to put it. That's a lot of times by these things like the mixik and mavashel, Rashi's machadish this idea over here. So to begin with, you have to say, is the mixik to himself or is it to others? That's number one. Just like if he's allowed to do this, will he come to do more? Which that really it probably starts with him, and and for him, he knows that what he did to the coals. So like who it did, it's going to spread to others. Like it's like a W duo. Like you could tell, if you open up the like Rashi says, the stam cooking was going to be going on inside the pot. Inside, if you're really going to cook something, you're going to put it inside. You open up the thing to put it inside, you're going to see that the coals are not there, or they're there but they're covered over in a way that nobody cooks. So it's enough for a lot of these things. You can ask the same question. Ask the question if you have people over at your house, and it's such a real question that I've actually seen this happen. You have people over for your house, 3, 4, 5 times, whenever you're just learning about Shabbos, and every time you leave the house, you walk out with carrying things. So you happen never have explained to them there's such thing as an Erev. But still, even though you don't see that, you generally see the Erev when you carry it out of an individual house. The Erev is somewhere around the perimeter of the city and way out there. Still, because I'll say that as long as it was done, someone did it, someone put it down there, and it's a thing that's known about. So then that's enough to take away the Gzera that you might come to Talmud Daled Amos Rishus Rabbim, where there's a real Rishus Rabbim. So Chazal said you do a certain thing, as long as you did it, then it sort of breaks the Gzera L'Chashash is broken.
But there are some like Dinim and Marzayin where it's specifically about making like whatever, like if you're having like meat and dairy on the same table. I don't know if this is a real halacha, but you're supposed to put something awkward on the table. Or I'm also thinking about in the sukkah on Sukkot Torah, if you're sitting there, like to have something else like a pot or whatever to be, so that it's like you can tell that it's not that you're not doing it. You know what I mean? So like why, I don't know.
So you can tell if you look at the coals. Like in other words, if you
okay, that's
there is something there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So we can really go into all. You can ask series on a lot of different Gzeras Chazals, and sometime we can go into that maybe. But you find Tzedakah by D'Rabbanan, as long as you even did what you needed to do to begin with, even if it doesn't remain. It's still like, let's say, putting a thing between Ishtanida, putting something on the table. So then you're allowed to eat by themselves at the table because you put something something that's a little bit out of the ordinary in between them, like on the table between them where they're eating. But even if one of the kids runs in and grabs that toy or whatever and runs off with it, it's the fact that you put it down to begin with, that's enough that you're still allowed to continue eating. So,
but the din is always that it's always about having us like a siman that it's not. It just depends on how we might may go with how visible the siman is, but the point is always siman.
The fact that it was done, so then Chazal, it's like it's not a loophole. It's hey mamru. The same Chazal that answer this, that we don't answer it in this case. That's always important to keep in mind. Like when you explain it, let's say people often come to me with the time that like, how do they, the Torah says don't carry, so you're going to come and the rabbis found a loophole that you could put strings around the city and now you can carry like is that spirit of the law? Is that how do you make loopholes like that? So it's always important to explain to them this is not a loophole at all. It's the same. The Torah said you could carry here. For carry any place that has a Rishus Rabbim Deraisa, the Torah says you can't carry. You can't make an Erev either. Erev doesn't work there. Erev only works in a place that really Midaraisa you're allowed to carry. Just the Rabbanan where it goes are on that place, like on a Carmelis, it's Rishus Rabbim D'Rabbanan. Midaraisa is not a Rishus Rabbim, it's Mahum Tur, it's Mutar. But the Rabbanan themselves where it goes are on that place not to carry, to consider our streets, even though they're not 600,000 people walking in them, consider them Rishus Rabbim on a D'Rabbanan level, because if you carry there, you might come to talk to carry somewhere in Manhattan or in Japan that has 600,000 people. So it's the same Rabbanan that they said to not carry in this place. You shouldn't forget about the issue of carrying Shabbos, where there really is an issue to carry in the Torah. So the same Rabbanan said, but there's another way you can also remember that by making an Erev, reminding you that that you can't just indiscriminately carry in any public place, and that's enough of a reminder that you shouldn't also not come to carry in a place that really isn't necessary to carry. So it's not a loophole. It's hey mamru v'hei mamru. The same Rabbanan that said it's usher to begin with. They said, but however, we have a caveat. We can fulfill our purpose in doing this a different way as well. So it's not at all against the spirit of the law for carrot. It's all in the spirit of the law. It's a different way that the Rabbanan said you can also fulfill their tachlis. It's an important thing to keep in mind for ourselves and explain to people. Yeah, somebody had a question?
I think it's similar to what was just mentioned, but it wasn't there Tosfos that talks about what Beis Hillel is talking about is doing Gerufa before Shabbos itself, right? Because you can't actually do it on Shabbos.
Yeah, it's all before Shabbos. You can't to do Gerufa on Shabbos was an Issa D'Oraisa.
So if you're doing it before Shabbos itself, why would there be an issue of you thinking that you could, that you're cooking? Do you hear what like why would there be an issue of more sign?
Just because you're taking food that's not totally cooked and you're putting it on a, I mean, if they would sweep away the coals, still those ovens remain very, very, very hot. They were heated up by the coals. So the walls of the tanur are extremely hot, and they put those on there and they continue to cook and get really well cooked.
Right. No, that I understand. But again, the coals are completely gone, aren't they?
Well, that's enough look as well to see.
Right. Oh, they're either on the side or completely gone, but they're gone from underneath the Kedera.
Right.
So what would you be going to, like, unless you're taking the Ron's position that they're on the side, like, what would you be stoking if they're completely gone from underneath it?
In economy, there wouldn't be anything but then that's why it's mutter, because you took it away. Hagufa.
Okay, so where's the more sign issue? If like you took it all away,
the
there's nothing
Mar
for
sign is not going to be putting it on before. It's going to be if you're machzir it. If you that's b'shamas machadash that even if it's garvakatam, if you machzir food that still you want to cook more, and even though there's no Isra Bishul on it right now because it's already Musha called Sarko, but you want it to cook more to get better done, to get more like, let's say, chonti instead of just being so Beishamas Machadish that on Shabbos to put it on a hot place where it's going to get Niskaim Chavto and it's going to get more cooked. So then that still looks like Mixed Kavachal. They still is cholok on that. That's not a problem. Once Gav Katan doesn't look like that. Beishamai holds that still could be Mixed Kavachal because you're doing a Maisa on Shabbos, taking a pot that needs more cooking, you put it on there, it's very hot and it gets more cooked. So it's not really cooking. It's not really, and there's no Gzir of Shem Yachata because there's no coals there, but it still looks like Bishul. And that's the Chumrah of Beishamai. We're not agreeing with that. We're saying that's not one should do Gav. Rashi says whole of a Gareth, exactly what you're saying. Since it's swept away, we're not Gareth that. It's not Mitzvah Kavachal anymore. But Beishamai still holds that it looks like your machshava doing this kayam. You want it to be cooked. It's becoming cooked. You did it on Shabbos, so that's enough ingredients to make it mix like a mavashal to have that concern. Okay. Now, looking at Tosas over here, that Rashi Tosas says lo yitan achi yigrov perish v'kuntris mishum tosefes hevel. So, like Rashi is putting into, like we said, the whole sugya of Hatmana, and that's where the most of Hevel comes from. They near the read. I feel a grufa tuma. He must have his Hevel yoser mikamed varim metonin. Like we said, that even if you add it's garfakatim, it's still way hotter than a lot of things over there in that parak. It's a lot hotter than melach and salt. So we said Rashi, he thinks Rashi, Kipshuto that. It's no, Rashi says Kilu is no longer Mosad Hevel. The way we're saying it is that it's a Gilui Das. And the raya to say that really is, just to answer that Pshat and Rashi, it's easy to say that, but we need a raya to say that. So my raya to say that is Rashi and Lamed Zayin Rabeis. And that sugya that we mentioned before that Rashi alludes to, that if you covered Rashi and Lamed Daled alluded to this, that if you covered over it, and then it was this lapsa, then it got reflamed once you already covered it. We say you're allowed to still be masha on it. There Rashi says, shiny halcha de kitma, and Lam Zayim Beis, it's like, about the 8 lines down, and Rashi says, shiny halcha de kitma, but gali daite de la nichale bitzimuke, by putting by covering it to begin with ashes, even though it got reflamed, you did a gilui das that you're not interested in having this become tzamuk, to heat it up more to shrink. You're not interested in the shrinkage of this food to continue cooking and get more shrunk. So here Rashi is magala das, that there's a concept of gilui das over here, that the kisui over here. Rashi in the Mishnah didn't tell us this, but he's revealing to us over there that the way this works is not just a dry halacha of covering it, and now it's like a sign that's like a neon sign saying, don't, I'm just putting a sign down, a reminder, a hecker, a maisa hecker, but it's a gilui das that I'm not interested in this getting more further cooked. That's a very important point in Rashi, and that answers Tosas Kasha, because it says in Achanami, it is hotter than a lot of things in Perek Metonim, but there you didn't do any gilui das to them. You didn't do anything to the salt to minimize its effect or whatever. Here you did a maisa to minimize the effect, to take it down a notch in the heat of it. So then that's no longer a problem, because that gilui das still works as long as it's there. Lloyd, yes, another kasha. The chananya shari lishos afkash ene gufa. Below usher most of hevel eladafka batmana. So he says Hanania is allowing us to be masha even when it's not grufa. As long as it is uvushal in the next sugya Hanania of Michael ben Rasoi, right? Either it's Machovis Ramam Rashi, it's a third cooked or a half cooked, whatever it is. Once you get to the bishul Hanania, then there's no longer exera. So Tosas is alluding to say we don't find such a heter in hatmana to do hatmana by something which is half cooked. Where do we find a heter for that? Where do we find such a heter? Where do we find that the kulas that we're going to say in this parak apply back to atmana? We don't find such a heter in atmana. Now the emes is that Tosas over here l'shitasam. Tosas in the beginning of Bemet Tomnin, just in the bottom of Nun of Mem Zayin and Beis. So when it goes, the Mishnah goes to the list of things you're not allowed to be tomin in, Gefes, Zevel, and Melach, etc. So he brings there in the name of Ravenu Shmuel that it has to be that the whole Isser of Metomin is talking about bashal v'lo bashal. It's partially cooked but not fully cooked. Awal Gedera Chayisa ubashal Sharinim of Chesam Abayis. The Gemara in Chesam Abayis says that if you have something which is totally raw, which stirring the coals will not be enough to really get it cooked. Let's say for Friday night, have it cooked if it wasn't cooked already, or if it's a cold sarko, it's already fully cooked. Then also when there's no chash, yichata b'gecholim. So the same thing will apply here by Tomnim also. You're allowed to do atmana. You'd be allowed to do atmana on something which is fully cooked or not cooked at all. So Ben Shmuel is learning. Ben Shmuel is the Rashbam, which is the grandson of Rashi. Is learning like Rashi L'chora that Hanami, that the heterim of our parak of whatever we find in the heterim of Shehiyah are also going to stretch over to Hatmana. So when the Mishnah asks over here to do Hatmana in Gefes, Veitzim, certain types of things that they're most of Hevel, will only apply if it's a little bit cooked but not cooked, and perhaps according to Rashi by us, then also it's Michael ben Rasoy, it'd be the same thing. If it's already Michael ben Rasoy, then there's no Isser of Atmana on it. And Achanami, Utaka will use the terim of this parak to Atmana. And it says, "Ein near Rabbeinu Tam." Rabbeinu Tam's cholik on that. This toast over there. That Islam ukmei masnisim b'stam k'derish and muvishal bein mishnasas. That the Mishnah over here, Pashtus, is going on stam kederis that are totally mavushal by Erev Shabbos. It's not differentiating over here. The Mishnah didn't say any stipulations of how cooked it is. Mashma for the Mishnah is going even in a case where it is fully cooked. So it says, there's two separate gzeras, Shehiyah and Atmana. Shehiyah, when it's not derech Hatmana, like in our parak, has certain heterim to it. Hatmana, they aser in any case, even if it's mushkol tzarkoi. And therefore, it's Shehiyah's mutter Michael ben Drasoi, and Hatmana is also Michael ben Drasoi. That's the machokas over here, if you learn that parak. But so Tosus l'shitasam, Rashi l'shitasai, that's all one sugya really. So then that's the Rashban that the mission over there has to be talking about, where it's not Michael ben Drasoi. Tosus over here says we don't find such a thing. So because Tosus over here is going like a Rebbeinu Tam, like it says over there, and then it goes on to say, "Well, also Mosef Hevel eladafka batmana, avalishoy shari." And by Shehiyah, it doesn't matter if it's Mosef Hevel or not. The whole concept of Mosef Hevel that Rashi puts in over here has nothing to do with the sugi over here. It's a dry gzera that you can kind of stir the coals over here, but it's not tully on whether or not it doesn't have to be atu. You might come to, if it's like this, then you're going to also put matman beremetz. That's a whole raid that has to do with the sugi of atmana. Here it's totally different. So that's the fact that it's very hot over here. These coals are very, very hot. Even though you put a thin layer of ashes over them, doesn't bother me. Even though it's much hotter than the Mishnah in Metonim Pratmana, because that's Atmana. So there, if it's mostly hevel, it's all right away usher, no matter how cooked it is. And over here, we're matir it in Tananya because it's not derech Atmana. It's more kal than Atmana because it's not totally surrounded. It's not as the heat is not so well contained by Shehiyah as it is by Chazara and by Hatmana. Therefore, we don't care if it's mostly hevel or not. So these are the two different worlds going on over here. In the world of Rashi, that it's a world of Hatmana. In the world of Tosus, that it's a new Gzera of Shehiyah. And that's one big nafkamina is going to be that nafkamina of to what extent it has to be bushel or not. The Ran, that you saw, is really goes with the Mahalach of Tosus, and just the Ran adds in important words, which I think everything the Ran says, even though it's going really in Tosus, but everything that the Ran says that it's a heker, that the shot in you can really misread the Ran. I'm not going to read the whole thing right now. If you look at it's really important to go through the whole Ran carefully. And he has different lashonos over here that seems to be misleading. He starts off and he's talking. You clear the chakira. Are we doing? Is this what we're doing over here? Is it a heker, or is it a gilui das? Is it just like putting down a sign and then it's just a reminder, like a dry reminder, or is it you did something that's megala what's going on inside of you when you do it's like more like a din in the gavra than it's just the chefza has a heker to it. So, but one could misread the Ran, I think, and he uses the word heker a number of times. Mashma, the other side of the coin from Rashi, but then the Ran himself does say, Mefurish, in the Dumaskal of Akashalon. Where is it? I'm sorry, wrong place. Wrong place. Okay, I'm sorry. The Ran in he speaks about two things. One is that it's not enough that there is a heker there, but you have to do a maisa hekera. It's important that a maisa was done. So if it's, he stresses that point at the end of Divrei Maschil Ad Sheyigrof. So if it's just a heker that's there, like a sign is put up to remind you that don't stir these coals. So why is it so important that you do a maisa? It was done through a maisa. Just have a heker there, even if it's done maisa kof ba'alma. If it just happens to be there. It's a reminder. Why is that not enough? So the Ran himself says in the end of Divrei Maschil Kira, right before it says Ad Sheyigrof, he says that Mishum hachi kol shegarfa katan dika hekera Shemesalik daito milachtos begecholin shari. Whenever you do garfa katum, so not that itself is a hecker, like it's a standing hecker, but the Ran defines the hecker means the hecker is really in you. It's not a hecker. There needs to be something there, but the main hecker is not really on the fire, even though that's what Chazal said to do the hecker on the fire. What does that do? But covering the fire, ika hekerish misalak daitoi milachtos begecholin. So the hecker is in the gavra that you are megala das through this hecker. This is a hecker that you were megala your das at some point. You're not going to stir these coals. So that in that way, it's really the same as Rashi, even though the Ran goes with Tosas Pshat over here, and Tosas learns like the Balamor learns over here, and the Shem the Rach and others showing him that second.
Would a nafka be then? Would a nafka be that if you talk, let's say another person came and saw the hecker, and it was clear as the hecker, that beside that other person, it would not be a hecker?
No, it's as long as it was done. I mean, Chazal obviously said it in this fire. So, and like other people in the family, someone else walks in, they could be somewhat on this. As long as there was a Maisa Gilui Das, there's a hecker that there was a Gilui Das on these coals, that they're not going to stir them. So then the hetero, I mean, the Ran doesn't speak this out. I would think nobody in Shulchan, no poskim came along and said that hecker only works for the he who made the hecker. So then you need for all the Bnei Abayis to kind of do their own hecker, and everybody has to go sprinkle a little ashes on. We don't find such a halacha, so we'll have to say that it stretches to other people. But the Yisoda Davar is that that there's a hecker, that there was a gili das, that these coals are not going to be stirred. I think that's the main point over here. These coals are outside the realm of being stirred.
But
yeah.
Rashi holds it has to be not most of Hevel, right? That's Rashi.
Well, you do not that it's the most of Hevel, but you did a Maisa to take it down. Because we're answering Tos's kasha. Tos says it's still most of Hevel. Trying to get away from that. To say no, as long as Rashi says your Megala Das, that by minimizing the Hevel even a little bit, even a minimal amount, so then that's enough of a Gilui Das that you are not interested in heating this up more. Because you did the opposite.
But according to Tos, as long as there is a reduction, then it's enough.
Tos has nothing to do with reduction. Tos doesn't really explain what the pshat is. He doesn't come back and explain what are you doing. He just says it's not about that. So then Tosas leaves us open to two possibilities. Either it's a taka dry hecker, it's like putting a sign, it's like a reminder, or he's going to go with the Ran that you need to go through a Maisa Gilui Das. It's also everyone agrees it's a Gilui Das question. The question will then be the way we're learning Rashi. So Rashi says Gilui Das, the Ran says Gilui Das. So what's the difference? The difference is how you affect the Gilui Das. According to Rashi, you affect it by minimizing the Hevel. According to the Ran, even though there's no minimizing the Hevel at all, the Gilui Das is just I don't want to stir these coals. So I did a Maisa, like it's a Maisa Siluk. It's a Maisa, I'm nostalgic from this by doing this. By Garfa Katan, it's completely a din of I'm nostalgic from it. But Rashi holds that since Rashi Lishitaso holds that we're dealing with the sugya of Hatmana over here, and the Isra Hatmana is B'davar HaMosif Hevel, so the only way to be nostalgic from it is to do a Maisa, to be Poiches in some way. That's the way Chazal said, you can't just put up a sign, you have to do something which is Poiches, the Tosefes Hevel. Now, Agav Orche just is not really our sugya right now, but I just want to, once we're in the middle of this, we see another just side chiddush in these Rishonim that being the Rashi, being all the other Rishonim, everyone's agreeing that to put the pot on top of the coals is considered hatmana. It's just that the Ran brought down that's the Balamor, B'Shem the Rach, and the sugi over here is talking not like Rashi. They're cholik. Once they're cholik and Rashi and say it's not a sugi of atmana, that they also qualify it by saying that just getting over bronchitis, so I don't know how much longer my voice will last. So that since it's not a sugya atmana, so they have to make it b'mitzias not atmana. So the only way they do that is to say we're talking about that the pot is not on the coals like Rashi, and therefore shaykh to atmana. It's like on a tripod or on top of stones, whatever that go above the coals. So it's not touching the coals. And that's what they say in order to take it out of the realm of atmana. You see, agavorche, excuse me, that they're all learning that if it would be touching the coals, that would be atmana. Which is a little bit, somewhat of a pella. The Shulchan Aruch at the end of Reish and Gimel Sif Aleph, and also in Reish and Zion in the Sugi of Hatmana, and I believe it's Sif Zion over there, that or Sif Zion or Ches over there in Reish and Zion. So the Shulchan Aruch over there says clearly, like the Rishonim, that if it's sitting on the coals, that would be considered Hatmana. And that's a problem with Hatmana. There are Ma and Reish and Zion. The Ramah also over here in Reish and Gimel, the Ramah says that it's not considered atmana. It's right here. Yeah, it's Reish and Gimel, the end of Sif Aleph. The Ramah says, "Yeshomrim dafili mektira medus al gavi haish mamish kolzman shehi megula l'mayla lo mikri atmana the shari v'chen minag." As long as it's megula l'mayla, it's not covered from by something musaf hevel from the top, then it's not considered hatmana. And that's our mini, like the Ramah. So if it's not totally covered, then it's not considered hatmana, according to the Ramah. So the pella is, where does Ramah come from? It seems like from all the Rishonim are sugya, from Rashi all the way to all the Rishonim are cholik and Rashi. None of the Rishonim said, no, it's not atmana, Rashi, because who cares that it's sitting on the coals? It's not covering them in the mila. Nobody said that. They all said, anachanami, if it was in the coals, it would be atmana. Just they said it must be on a tripod. It must be removed from the coals. That's the only way to remove it from atmana is to remove it from the coals. So the Ramah is similar to Pella, but the Maisa we go like the Ashkenazim, at least, for Sephardim it's a big problem. For Ashkenazim, we go with this Ramah that it's not covered all the way around. It's not considered atmana. That's what there's a famous, like the Shlomo Zalman, at the end of his life, he came out with his like the last tube he ever came out with before he was suddenly an iftar, was to be machmir on a crock pot. You should put roll up balls of aluminum foil, put it underneath the crock pot inside the crock, so it should not be touching the coals, because otherwise it's a problem with atmana. So and then he was challenged on that. And nobody knew what the challenge was, but it seems that people challenged him on it. So he said he needs to rethink it, and then before he got to rethink it and rewrite it, then he was nifter in the middle of that tshuva. So I was speaking to Rav Neuvert, that's how the author of Shmir Shabbos Kol Chassav, and I asked him why would Rav Shlomo Zalman be machmir by a crockpot if there's no it's not covered in milamayla like the Ramah. So he said, that's exactly what I asked him. And he said he needs to think about it again. And then he passed away. So it's been bothering me for many, many years. What could he have been thinking? Maybe he had a different shot in what it means with Chusa L'Mayla and Amma, or maybe he thought to be Machmer like all the other Rishonim that seemed to be saying not like the Ramah, and maybe there's room to be Machmer like that or whatever. We don't really know because we just don't know. That was lost. Akapanim, as I say, a side nafkamina coming out of the Rishonim Sugya. It's getting. I just want to pick up one last nakuda that. The two nakudas are important. One is something that the Achronim raise. Well, I'll just read, just to illustrate what we're saying. It's important that this point of Gilui Das. So the Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Reish and Gimel says says the lesson. Take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, Reish and Gimel in the beginning. He explains Garfa Katum. He says, "Hainu shekisa gacholim be'efer lamaet choimam." You cover it with ashes to minimize the heat. So it sounds like he's learning like Rashi, and that's one. But the Mishnah Berurah there in Sifkat and Yudal, it says that it's enough to put a kisui efer cold to, like we mentioned just a little bit. And he says the chora tzarach yun. It's not mamay but it's not really minimizing anything. The Mishnah Berurah says that v'tam b'chol zeh kevin shegila daitoi the lo boy legacholin sagi the bavadai lo asu lachtuye. So the Mishnah Berurah answers this kasha with gilui das. So that's sort of goof what we're saying in Rashi, that the Shulchan Aruch seems to go with Rashi's mahalach, and that we're answering that the pshat to answer Tos's kasha that it's still hot. That so how do you get out of that? So the answer is gilui das. That's what Mishnah Berurah really says. It's not a dry din, but it's a gilui das. Now, one question that the poskim raised with this, sorry, is that a blech, the blechs that we have today, should not really minimize any heat at all. They don't really minimize. They don't minimize the heat of the fire. There might be some minimizing the heat that gets to the pot to some extent, but the fire itself, if it needs to be done, the way Chazal said to do it is to actually put something to minimize the fire. So you're not minimizing the fire in any way when you put a blech. And it's easier to understand according to the Ran that it's in Heker, because if it's even Heker and a Gilui Das, so since it's not the direct official like this at all, and you're minimizing it, what's going to happen to the pot and everything, so Encha Gilui Das Gadol Mizeh, if it has nothing to do with minimizing the heat. According to Rashi, that you have to minimize the heat of the fire, then that could be problematic. And talk to the Chazon Ish held because of this and because of other, and there's another Rashi we'll see later on in the parak, the Chazon, which we have a raya against really, but Chazon Ish learned that a blech doesn't work, so Bnei Brak doesn't use a blech. It doesn't help anything. I mean, it helps only for Chazara, but it doesn't help to have it not what's called sarkod. So those that follow the Chazon Ish, like in Bnei Brak, then they would not put food on a blech unless it's mavushal called sarkod, because it has to be minimizing the heat, and it's not. That's what Chazon Ish held. But we the Maisa do help. We the Maisa do use a blech. So one problem is it doesn't minimize the heat. The second problem is that in Bizman Chazal, so the chash of chadiyah b'gacholim, stirring the coals, and the coals themselves were the same, one and the same. The place where you stir the coals and the coals themselves are all one chetza. So by covering the coals, you're also covering the possibility of stirring them. You're showing you're not going to stir them. But now the handles are not in the fire. The fire is not the handles. The way you heat up you would ranch up the heat or minimize it would be through turning the knobs, not through doing anything to the fire. So the question is, do you help anything by covering the fire if you don't cover the knobs? Because it's still, did you do anything that you're megali, you're not mechatab b'gacholim or not? Since you didn't cover the makam chatiyah, the place of stirring, which is the handles, the knobs. That's another shayla the poskim raise. So it's before some Shemer Baron Cutler. That's how he held that the main garfa katan today is really covering the knobs. Even if you don't cover the fire, if you cover the knobs, then you're mekayim zeres garfa katan because you took away, you masalik the possibility of stirring the coals, of heating it up. Rav Moshe in the Tshuva, it's an Orach Chaim Chelik Aleph, Siman Tzadi Gimel. He raises these questions, and he actually goes through this whole cheshbon that Bishleim, according to the Ran, it's not a problem because it's not the direct mivashal this way with the blech. So Encha Gilui Das Gadol Mizeh, which mainly Gala Daita, it's nothing to do with him minimizing the heat. No problem. But according to Rashi, it can't be most of Hevel. He learns Shad and Rashi actually interesting. He learns that to answer Tos's kasha, not like we said it's Gilui Das. He learns that the shot when you're machase with a little bit of afer to answer Tos's kasha, that Tos says it's still most of Hevel. He says no. Let's say all the gefes and things that are most of Hevel and Perik Metomnim, they constantly are most of Hevel the whole time that they're there. As long as the salt is there, or the gefes, whatever it's they continue to be most of Hevel at the same level. Mashenkin, these coals, if you cover them over, then it's going to be pokasaholic. It's going to be going down. The heat's going to be minimizing all the time. So he says that's why he learned Shad and Rashi, and therefore when you put the blech, then you're not minimizing anything. It's going to keep on burning at the same power, no matter if blech or not. The fire is not going to be going down bit by bit because you put a blech there. So for it's a kasha and Rashi. So he answers, or Moshe says that Pshat and Rashi is really not that the heat is pokasaholic, it gets less and less. It's just that through the kisui, you're minimizing the heat that's going to reach the pot. And even though, and he says that you accomplish also with the blech, you are minimizing the heat getting to the pot. So even though that's a chiddush to say, where Moshe says really there's a mokum to say that you don't need garf katam at all by I would say a gas stove. You shouldn't need garf katam at all because the gzera of garf of machata b'gecholim is the same gecholim. The same gecholim you're going to heat them up. But we never find a gzera. You might bring more wood or more gefes for eitzim and add it onto that. We don't find a gzera like that. The question is why? Was it hard to do? Whatever. But we never find a gzera. You might add more wood to the fire. The fire that's there already might stir. So Moshe says a chiddush that if you turn up the knob by a gas stove, you're not stirring the gas that's already there, the heat fire there. You're mosif eitzim. You're adding more fuel to the fire, and we don't have a gzera on that. So mechatesi, there's even isra at all. You should need a blech. So that's a chiddush to say, but Lamaisa says since there's a tzad like that, l'achar legamrei, then there's certainly welcome to be some on the other Rishonim, even though maybe there's a question of Rashi to be able to, the blech should work, and as long as you did your puches the eish gets to the fire, then you're Mekayim Rashi also, and it's certainly hecker in the other Rishonim. According to that, the Rosh says you shouldn't need to cover the knobs because you already did your hecker in the fire. However, he's the Maskana, he says that it's better to cover the knobs also than you take yourself out of all chashashas. He's pretty strong at the end that it's ideal that whatever covers the fire should also cover the knobs. But he definitely says it holds that a blech does work, not like the Chazon Ish. Okay, we'll hold it here, and with Shem, the Torah should be supposed for the Assyrian, which if you look to them from Hera and Rapakol Cholim and Bishomer and Klaiso.
Amen.
Can I ask Rabbi something that's like not related to Sugya?
You can ask. I'll see if I can talk.
Does Rabbi have anything to share regarding the Anhagas of Rav Shlomo Zalman, like in like a Eitz Milchama?
That's a loaded question. There's many pages of notes from the Gulf War. Different. I'll just for right now, I'll just share one little story with you that during the Gulf War, so things are really pretty scary. Like we thought it's going to be gas. They were threatening to be sending nerve gas and everything, and people were going hysterical, and we had to have giving out gas masks to everybody, and had our kids and one kid in a gas crib, and another one in a gas suit for little kids. And my mother was Aliyah Shalom was hysterical all the time and said, "Why don't you come home? You come home and visit sometimes anyway. Why don't you come now?" Question of keep it up aim, and so I do. So among other things, many discussions with Rosh Zalman, but I'll just tell you that one of the conversations he said, "What you're going to leave and leave me here?" So it's a longer discussion, but then there are all kinds of shalos of leaving a radio on because they would have a golf paquette, whether they should have a golf paquette or not, have a quiet station that only will kick on if there's any news for the war to go on, and what's the best to do? Should they use that, or should they have such a thing, or should they not? Running a radio on if the information needs to be had, and there are many shalos that we've done. Also using a gas mask, not using a gas mask, and whether to shave or not to shave to be proper to work properly. many shalos came up, but the main thing was he said like, don't worry, nothing's gonna happen anyway. Which, nothing, that was a Pella, that 39 scuds hit Eretz Israel, you know, Kaminyan, 39 Makos, and not a single person was killed from a scud. Even though one scud hit the American base in Afghanistan and killed, one scud killed like 350 servicemen, soldiers, but 39 scuds hit Eretz Israel, including direct hits on buildings, and everybody walked away. The building collapsed and everybody walked away. It was a Pella, that's what was going on over there at the time. Except for there was one person that actually was killed indirectly from a scud. There was hit a building in Tel Aviv. The building it hit completely collapsed and everybody walked away okay. But a piece of shrapnel went through the wall of the building next door and killed one guy that was next door. Now that person had on his door had a sign that said "Ani Ochel Chazir," and that guy used to drive every Friday night or Shabbos day. He would attach a big radio on the back of his motorcycle and used to ride up and down Rehov Rabbi Akiva on Shabbos to stare everybody Shabbos. And that's the only one person that was actually killed directly from a scud. The whole Gulf War. Just saying, as we say. But yeah, there are a lot of stories from the war.
Great message to share for NCSY.
Pardon?
Great NCSY message. Keep Shabbos.
And many did speak about the fact that there are I think 32 yeshuvim right near Gaza, and this you know, when they came in, they infiltrated and killed everybody, you know, and 30 of the yeshuvim, there were 2 that they didn't go into, and they were locked up and everything there, because those were the 2 that are Shomer Shabbos yeshuvim, and they weren't touched. Many Rabbanim spoke about it. The only 2 that weren't touched were the 2 Shomer Shabbos yeshuvim down there. I'm not saying anything about anybody else, but just you can't not notice that. So, like we say, a lot more than we keep Shabbos. Shabbos kept us.
Yeah, I saw that also. I saw a couple. I listened to a couple shiurim that the rabbis mentioned the same thing.
Yeah,
pretty amazing.
Yep, unbelievable. Okay, let's go Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.
I feel better.
Thank you. I mean, Shabbos.
Shabbos, good Shabbos, Rebbe.